Which band inspired me when I was a teenager? I have to say the Beatles.
Yeah.
Yeah, the first and foremost, the Beatles. And then to a lesser degree, the Stones. But number one influence, the Beatles, hands down. Ah, um, I would love to do a masterclass. It's funny, I was approached to do a masterclass quite a few years ago. The thing about that is my drumming style is very simple. I'm not a Neil Peart or a Vinnie Colaiuta. I'm not one of those prog rock drummers. So I don't know if my style would suit a masterclass. But if someone offered me, the chance to do it, yes, I would. I have written my memoir, and it is in a locked safe, and I don't know if I'll ever release it because it's a little, how can we say, salty. But it's a lot of sex, drugs, and rock and roll in that order. I guess the first one that really springs to mind was when Free appeared at the Isle of Wight Festival, which was England's answer to Woodstock. And that was approximately 600,000 people on this huge hill. And no monitors in those days. There were no monitors. We just relied on... but flying into over the crowd in the helicopter and looking down and thinking, oh my God. Yeah, that was... first appearance at Madison Square Garden with Bad Company. That's pretty memorable. And then a stupid one was end of one of our American tours. And the road crew always play pranks on us. And I was doing a drum solo and it was going down really well. I mean, the crowd were going nuts. And I'm flailing away and suddenly my drumstick hit something. And it was a huge inflatable King Kong. The road crew were lowering down onto my head. So they were applauding King Kong, not my drum solo. That was a few of the things that's happened to me. I really liked Free, the second one. I loved we were just coming together as a group. Tons of Sobs, we'd only just started out, but Free, we'd done many gigs, and we were much more cohesive as a band. The cover was beautiful. Everything about Free, the second album was my favorite. That's really hard to. There's two that kind of stand out straight away. Ready for Love, Bad Company's version of Ready for Love, and Can't Get Enough, which was on the first album. I was 25 and I was just really coming into my own. Those two kind of stand out for me. I started actually playing real drums when I was about 14. Prior to that, I was banging on boxes and with knitting needles and stuff. My dad was not supportive. In those days, you had to become a lawyer or a doctor, some such. My mum was very musical and said to my dad, give him 2 years between high school and college. Give him 2 years. If nothing happens after 2 years, he'll go to college. And on the 23rd month of the 24, I got a break. So thank you, Mum. I would have to say the three kings, Freddie King, B.B. King, and Albert King. Sorry to lump them all together, but it's kind of hard to just cite one blues influence, but those three guys wrote the book for me. Oh my God, you won't believe the answer to this. I was arrested in 1971. I was driving up from LA. Someone had lent me their Mustang, and I was caught speeding. And they found a joint, like a little roach. Nowadays you can buy it, but back then it was huge. It was like a big drug bust. It wasn't even mine. I spent 5 days in Salinas County Jail, and they had the radio on 12 hours a day and blow me down if they didn't play All Right Now. And that was the first time I ever heard it on the radio. So, yeah. Remo drumheads, REMO. Most drummers out there know they're like the most. I just tune them until I like the sound and I like the feel. Usually you have the batter head, the one that you hit, just slightly tighter than the bottom head. Oh, smaller. Definitely smaller. You know, the thing about big stadiums is that you become more of a spectacle than an audio. You know, people can't really hear you. They have to watch you on jumbo screens, and there's a delay from this. You know, you hit the snare and they will hear it 2 seconds later. They're horrible. Big gigs are horrible. So I really like small, intimate shows. Abe Laboriel, who plays with Paul McCartney. He's a great drummer, by the way. Well, they're not so new, and being an old geezer, I don't really keep my ear to the ground that much. But the band that's knocked me sideways in the last few years is Paramore. They're wonderful. Hayley Williams, I mean, they're just, and Zach Farrow, the drummer. I know they've been around a while, but they constantly knock me out. They're a wonderful band. Yes, I would. I love playing. I miss playing because, you know, Paul is because of health problems, you know, we're not, Bad Company are not playing anymore. And I do miss playing. So, yeah, I would. Oh, let me think. Starting at the deep end, the Beatles, because the Beatles songs are not easy to play along guitar chord wise. So, yeah, I learned early Beatles, Revolver, Rubber Soul, those albums. And then to make life a little easier, I would listen to blues albums, which is just 3 chords. But between the blues and the Beatles, that's how I started playing guitar. Well, yeah. I mean, as Bad Company sort of winds their career down, I'm looking to score movies and TV shows. I've done a couple of little ones, indie things, just to dip my feet in the water, so to speak. And my name is on the books of several agencies in LA. So it's something I'm really looking forward to. Yeah, not necessarily just playing drums, but I play piano and guitar as well. So that's something I would really love to do as I age disgracefully. Koss, we called him Koss because there were 2 Pauls in Free, Paul Rodgers and Paul Kossel. So we all always knew Koss as Koss. Koss, believe it or not, was the driver of the band. He was the only one who had a license, and he would drive. He would do all the driving. It was amazing, and then he'd get out and play, and then he'd come back in and drive again. He was a sweetheart. He was like the Artful Dodger from Oliver Twist, and oh yeah, we used to go to these music stores in Shaftesbury Avenue in London, and he'd plug in, and he'd start wailing away, and all the snares on all the drums and like bzz, everything would be buzzing, and all the old guys would come and say, "Turn that fucking noise down." Sorry about that. But Paul just loved it, and he loved, you know, razzing people. So that was Dear Koss. McCartney, you know, any gig that McCartney did, just to sit there and immerse yourself in all those wonderful songs. Carnegie Hall. There was a pianist. I love classical music. Forget the name of the lady, but she was incredible. I saw Hendrix years ago, and he couldn't tune his guitar. He had no idea how to really tune his guitar, but it didn't matter. So off the top of my head, yeah, those are the 3 that stand out. I would say I love Warren Haynes because he's a wonderful blues player. McCartney again on bass. Chuck Leavell on keyboards. I don't want to piss people off. They say, well, why didn't you mention me? But the top of my head, yeah, that would be quite a band. McCartney, Warren Haynes, and Chuck Leavell. Terrifying. It really was. I'd have to go back to the Isle of Wight again, because you have to remember, back in those days, we were playing clubs. We were playing, little 100-seater clubs, and then thanks to Woodstock, we wanted to recreate Woodstock in England, and we got people like Sly, Bob Dylan, Jimi Hendrix, and this crowd just grew and grew and grew. So when we actually got out there, and there was no sound check, we just went on cold. And we were actually going to go on Saturday night because we had the big hit All Right Now, so we were flavor of the week. But because it was so chaotic, our time slot kept getting put back. We were supposed to go on at 8 in the evening, but it kept getting, and so we were having a little drink there, a little smoke, little drink, little smoke. By 10 o'clock, we were pretty out of it. And our manager said, "You're not going on tonight. You're going to come on tomorrow morning, Sunday morning," which is what we did. And you know what? It was beautiful because we'd had a glimpse of what it was like, and it terrified us. But Sunday morning, everyone was peaceful and quiet. They were rolling out of their sleeping bags, and the sun was up, and it was a beautiful Sunday morning, and we killed it. So it was that was our baptism of fire. I have two pleasures now. I play golf and I ride my Harley. And I've actually gone and played golf with my clubs on the back of my Harley a couple of times. People are going, "Who the hell is that?" So that's what I love to do. It was amazing to be asked to play alongside one of the greatest drummers ever. It was daunting, but I held my own. And we rehearsed in his little hotel room. I thought we did Whole Lot of Love, and I thought we were going to go to some warehouse with two kits and lasers and dry ice. No, we just sat on twin beds, and we went through the song. Then I got up there. It was in Munich, Germany, and yeah, it was good. It was cool, wonderful. That's a great question. I'll be really, really honest. If you blindfolded me and played a vinyl 12-inch and a CD and a cassette, it was way before your time, I could not tell you the difference. So I have a nostalgia for albums because I grew up with them. But I don't really mind the format as long as it's being heard by someone. Well, I remember with Free, I was raised in Bristol in the West Country of England, and there's a famous hall called Colston Hall in Bristol, and we played there Free. We were headlining on the back of All Right Now, and we all went round to my mum and dad's little apartment, and they all sat there like little boys. And mum and dad had been to the show, and they said it was so loud, which was cool. That was all right. But they were very proud of me. And I gave Dad my first gold album. He put it in his little room. Yeah, good question. Of course, Led Zeppelin. What happened was we just formed the band. We just formed Bad Company. And Peter Grant, manager of Led Zeppelin, asked if we'd like to be on the new label. And we said, yeah, we'd love to. And then a week later, he called up Paul Rodgers, and said, listen, Zeppelin, John Paul Jones has the flu, which actually wasn't true. He wanted to leave the band. And all the gear was going, the Headley Grange, which was this country house, was just lying there with all the gear. Would we like to take it over for a week? And we said, yeah. So we recorded our first album, thanks to the temporary breakup of Led Zeppelin. Well, Fire and Water was recorded in two studios. The majority was recorded in this little Trident Studios in St Anne's Court, which was in the West End of London. And it was surrounded by brothels. It was surrounded by these apartments with little bells on it saying, Ruby, Marigold or Donna. And in a small door was Trident Studios. So we spent most of our time recording, thank you. And the engineer was Roy Thomas Baker, who went on to become Queen's producer. And All Right Now was actually recorded in Basing Street, which was across town in Island Records. But the most of it was recorded in St Anne's Court, Trident Studios. The only time I get nervous before a show is if we're going to do a new song. I know it sounds crazy, but because keeping a set fresh, you can only do that by adding. Don't get too comfortable. So we add new songs every now and again, and then that's when I get really nervous. I do deep breathing, I do meditation, I do yoga, I do all the things that you don't do as a teenager. And I don't drink, I don't smoke anymore. So I always find time. Oh, and I have a nap. I always have a nap. Ever since I was in my 20s, I try to pass out for 10 or 15 minutes just to collect my thoughts. Not really. No. Sorry. If I do, I've probably forgotten the name of them, but I like Japanese food. So go figure. Actually, Ruth's Chris Steakhouse in Nashville. Very nice. That's a leading question, isn't it? I I'm not as fond of New York as I used to be. The older I get, I need more peace and quiet. I guess what I do like is the variety, the shows, the off Broadway, not necessarily Broadway shows, but off Broadway. There's so many great theatre troupes out there, and of course the music. Brooklyn, Manhattan, even the Bronx. These great clubs. So there's a huge variety of entertainment. But I'm hankering more for the peace and solitude of the country. Well, I love the Steeler. I'm leaving All Right Now to the side because that's a slam dunk. I would say the Steeler, Be My Friend, and Wishing Well. Yeah, Mr. Big is really hard. The slower the tempo, the harder it is to play, believe it or not. And Mr. Big is like molasses coming out of a cold bottle. That's a really good question. I actually got to play it with Warren Haynes, who called me up out of the blue a few years ago. He grew up listening to Freed and said, listen, we're playing at the Beacon. Would you come and play Mr. Big? I said, Warren, I haven't played it for 60 years, but I'll give it a shot. And it came out okay. But yeah, the slower the tempo, the more difficult it is to play. Okay, so back in the 60s, you're all listening, sitting comfortably. Back in the 60s, there were names. They were like nebulous names. There was Taste. There was Yes. There was Clouds. There were these sort of weird names like um, Country Joe and the Fish. Weird names. And we had our first rehearsal as Free. We didn't know what to call it, the band. And a friend of ours came into the where we were having the rehearsal. We're having a break, and he said, "Guys, you sound fantastic," you know. And we knew right then that we were going to be a band, but we needed a name. And he said, "Well, what are you going to call yourselves?" And we said, "I don't know." He said, "Well, listen, I had a band. His name was Alexis Corner, by the way, a very famous old blues man from England." He said, "I had a band called Free at Last." And obviously, you know, you can't call yourself Free at Last. Why don't you call yourself Free? And we all went, wow, yeah. But we we ran into some trouble from the get-go, because when we went for a little audition with Island Records, who were the greatest record company at the time, they didn't like the name Free. They said, look, it's going to cause confusion amongst club owners and promoters, because people are thinking, oh, we can come in for free, you know. So why don't you call yourselves the Heavy Metal Kids? We said, fuck off, you got to be kidding. The Heavy Metal Kids? Dreadful. So he said, then we don't have a deal. Oh, God. So we said, okay. And we walked out of the office thinking, what have we just done? And he called, his name was Chris Blackwell, the head of Island Records. He called us up later that evening and said, we'll give it 6 months. You've won this first round. We'll give it 6 months. And we never looked back. No, I just please vote for us to get in the Hall of Fame. It's been an honor to listen to some of these great questions, and maybe we'll do it again further down the road. So thanks for now. Bye-bye.